create certainty, we create stability. We are hindered in one way because, so when you try to do things, you have the demand side measures and the supply side measures. The demand side measures involve financial instruments. So the fiscal space available to an administration is very limited. But there are innovative approaches that we could adopt on the supply side. For example, in order to make sure that professionals remain, we provide them with a much fairer tax formula. Now I remember when taxation rates were hiked up, we questioned the government as to how they determined these particular tax rates. They had not gone through any financial viability. In fact, because of the very heavy tax rates, government revenue overshot their target. So the whole policy decision-making process in our country is very, very illogical, irrational, highly warped, not based on data, science, research, and evidence. But there are a lot of supply-side measures. For example, we plan on setting up 1 million new business startups. A lot of facilitation that the government can embark upon by relaxing rules and regulations which are not beneficial to the country. They have been there, forever without getting modernized and updated. So brain drain can be stopped. It can be stopped only through creating a better environment, economic, political, ensure that the rule of law prevails. We need to have a machinery to ensure that everyone who are involved in the bankruptcy of the country are brought to book, brought before the law. The assets, funds that were stolen are recovered and used for the present and future generations, invested in such a manner that it accrues benefit to the country. So there are a lot of things that can be done, and those will be done. And I think the mere confidence that a government provides in the people is also a very big factor. When you do from day one walk the talk, that will create an additional confidence, that, which will ensure that the psyche of the people as a whole would change for the better.
Adding to that, sir, in the manifesto, it was particularly mentioned that the University Grants Commission Act was to be reformed in a certain manner. And I'd like to pose this question to the entire panel. How exactly will this benefit the furtherance of education in Sri Lanka and whatnot?
Well, when you talk of education per se, it's not just the University Grants Commission and the relevant acts.
Yes.
Education in this country has to change from early childhood education. Do you know that if you talk to a pediatrician, they will testify the brain development of a person, 70% of it takes place up to the age of 5. So at a time when your brain develops up to 70%, Sri Lanka as a whole lacks a proper, regulated, formalized, structured preschool education, or now it's called early childhood education. So commencing from the preschool, we intend on reforming the whole education system. I think our system is outdated. If you look at education systems that have very high ratings. Countries such as Finland, Scandinavian countries, Singapore, Malaysia, Japan, South Korea, the European countries, United States. There the curricula and syllabi are structured in such a manner that it caters to the international labor market supply and demand issues. Whereas in Sri Lanka, I just don't know how the curricula and syllabi are designed and formulated. It's very, very old-fashioned and archaic. So we have to have an international job market-oriented education system. And we will certainly stress the importance of English, STEAM subjects, as I would call it, science, technology, English, engineering, maths, and also other areas such as medicine, law, environmental sciences, management sciences, information technology, new technology, computer science. I mean, those are the areas that have traction in the international labor market. So when we are talking of creating a skilled human resource pool in our country, it's not just to serve the domestic economic needs, it's to serve the international economic needs, which ultimately will help our country through remittances. So university system as a whole has to go through that change. We need to strengthen free education. Just barking about it without fact and substance would not suffice. Now, I'll tell you something that I saw with my own eyes. When I was a student at LSE in UK, 1 year prior to your graduation, there is what you call a headhunting program. It's otherwise known as talent search. Most companies, institutions, industrialists, entrepreneurs, they visit these universities. And 1 year before their graduation, they are given conditional offers. So if you get a first class, you will have this job, second upper, second lower, etc., etc. So that's how the system works there. So here, take the free education system, the university system. You do well in your grade 5 scholarships, O levels, A levels, and do really well at university. And where else do you go from there? It's either the Lipton Circus or the Fort Railway Station, right? I must not generalize, of course. I would like to exclude subject areas such as engineering, medicine, IT. Those areas don't suffer from that. But by and large, we all know, and we don't need to hide that fact. Vast majority of the graduates are from the arts sector, arts faculties, and this is what happens. So free education ultimately results in graduates going to various locations to demonstrate. And that shows the failure of the system. So what we have to do is to ensure that the education system is structured, reformed, designed, and implemented in such a manner that you make sure by the time you're a graduate, you're able to stand up on your own feet, and you will have institutions coming after you, as in the UK, who will be searching for your talent to be employed in their own companies and institutions. So I think the administration of the university structure has to change, and also this situation of politicians appointing these vice chancellors, that has to go out of the window. You have to have a meritocratic system, and we will depoliticize the university system and make sure that we are able to follow the international role models that have exhibited excellent results in education.
Well, now that we spoke about education and students, I would like to pose the question to the entire panel. How do you plan to bridge the digital rural areas to ensure all students, regardless of their location, can access modern digital learning platforms? And what role will the youth play in shaping the future of digital education in Sri Lanka?
So under the SJB's educational policy, we have clearly demonstrated that digital education is of importance. I think through Honorable Sajith Premadasa's Sakpal initiatives, he has, by distributing smart classrooms, that was one of the, just the starting point to show that how digital education is required to be brought in. So we clearly plan to bring in the digital literacy to education, be it at school level, and also bringing the digital infrastructure to ensure that our education is also enhanced and that it's also modernized. So it's a clear priority of the government.
Yes. Another thing I believe that a lot of the people here are very concerned about mainly relates to Samagi Jana Balawege as a political party. How does a young individual become a leader of this nation? What is the mode? What is the path that an individual such as myself or anyone else here, what are the steps we can take to become a leader? How do we get into politics?
Right now, unfortunately, the system is not so professional. You either have to be connected, you either have to be moneyed, you either have to have a political heritage. I'm not talking of SJB, I'm talking of the whole political system. Now, how do we go about creating a much more progressive approach for the youth, the educated, the professional to come in? That is, we believe that, let me take an example, say from the UK and US. Do you know that in the UK, the major political party leaders, let's say Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister and the leader of the Labour Party, he can't decide on the candidate for a particular constituency. That is decided by the constituency Labour Party. So the grassroots levels have a very big role to play, and the leader does not have extraordinary powers for the choice of the particular person. So you have decentralized the political process to such an extent. In the US, you have what you call primaries. I mean, of course, there are barriers to entry in this process also, but you won't have a picture-perfect program. But this, I believe, would enable those who are not connected, but those who are highly talented, to come in. And they need not be moneyed also, because the constituency party, either, I'm taking the UK example, constituency Labour Party, constituency Conservative Party. The constituency party members will themselves raise the requisite funds for that particular candidate's campaign. So, someone who is economically unempowered would also have that opportunity because he or she would be backed by the constituency party. Now, this is something which was experimented in 1991 by my late father, but I'm afraid it was a dismal failure, particularly because at that time Sri Lankan democracy had not reached to that level of political maturity. One may wonder whether it has done so now. But I think particularly after the democratic struggle, there's been a sea change in the way people think in conducting politics. Lots and lots of people have moved away from the traditional, archaic, old-fashioned methodologies. And now it's a very, very propitious time for these types of new thinking to come in. And it is only through that type of procedures which myself and my team hopes to implement post September 21, that we create an environment whereby talented, educated, professional, whatever their background may be, are also given a fair chance at coming in. So one of the ways is to have some sort of a primary system, as in the US, or giving the constituency political party greater power in determining the candidate, so that it's fair. Whoever they choose as an organizer or a candidate, it's the people's choice.
Yes, sir. Now, along those lines, our country functions under a representative democracy. Along these lines, there is a necessity to ensure that each and every citizen has a basic understanding or a basic dogma towards their political education. Now, within the current education system, phrases such as democracy is actually foreign, sad to say. Most students don't actually know what democracy is. Most students don't know what fundamental rights are. Is you, as president, will you fix this issue?
In fact, in one of my Sakwala programs, and also the other day in Parliament, soon after that program, I questioned the education minister on that. See, after our Sakwala program, we have a kind of a very short exchange of ideas with the school principal and the teachers. And one day I was wondering whether school libraries were given the constitution of the country. Actually, they don't have it. Here I'm talking to you about the vast majority of the 10,096 schools in the state sector. Of course, in the state sector, as you know very well, there is a division, there's a divide. You have the elite schools, the popular schools with excellent OBAs and OGAs. Those schools are very well supported. But then again, the vast majority of the schools that are in the periphery, that are in the regions, are not empowered at all. So through my Sakwala program, I have understood that virtually 100% of the schools, they lack a constitution. So I think political science, entrepreneurship, business management, those are also subjects that have to be included in the 1 to 13 curricula.
That is absolutely fantastic to hear, sir. Another particularly interesting...
And
yes.
English language. That's very important.
Of course, sir. Another particularly important subject we'd like to talk about, I think a lot of the young academics here are legal academics, legal young academics, is constitutional reforms. Now, in the manifesto, you particularly mentioned that the executive presidency should be essentially removed and a parliamentary system should be adopted. Can we understand the reasoning behind this? Because as we know, for the past history of Sri Lanka, many individuals have enjoyed executive presidency. Why change it?
The simple answer is abuse of power. Our constitution is a constitution that illustrates and exhibits the tripartite system of government. So the tripartite system has the three major institutions: the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, and we have the principle of separation of powers, and also the checks and balances that exist to ensure that each branch protects its autonomy while checking each other to minimize misdeeds. So when you have a president who has been adjudicated by the Supreme Court of the land to have violated fundamental rights by depriving the people of this country of their right to franchise at the local government election, and also through a Supreme Court interim order, when the Supreme Court of the country has questioned, because prima facie facts exist that the appointment of the Inspector General of Police was not constitutionally adhered to. What can you say? You have the head of state, either intentionally or unintentionally. It's anyone's guess as to what it is, has violated the Constitution. So, by and large, there is a trend of opinion in our country that has gained much traction, that a parliamentary system would ensure the protection of the three branches of government to such an extent that there will be less possibility of violating the supreme law of the land. In lieu of this change, we have already submitted a private member's bill. So we have walked the talk. I think the General Secretary has proposed a bill for the change of the system from executive to parliamentary. We have already walked the talk. It's done. But of course the government did not take it up. But we will certainly go ahead with it, because I think democracy is very important. The voice of the people has to be listened to. Even though several constitutional amendments have been enacted to minimize presidential power, still you have the situation of executive dominance of the governmental process, and that is not a healthy thing, especially to a country that's bankrupt. We need diversity of voices to be heard, and that diversity of voices will create and add a lot of richness and value to policy. So we are determined to make sure that this change takes place.
Thank you, sir. Just one
By the way, you can get the audience also to ask
Yes,
questions.
we're hoping to open the floor. Perhaps we can move directly into that now. Would anyone like to ask some questions? Yes?
Am I audible? Yeah. Good evening, sir. So my question to you is this, and this is not just you, but also for your party as well. So I don't think I need to explain myself about the situations that have happened in the past years. And obviously, given COVID-19, which occurred, that isn't the only reason for the downfalls for us to happen, for the fuel crisis, economic crisis and whatnot. There were some corruptions and ongoings as well. So what action do you and your party intend to take upon to ensure that in the future this corruption will not happen? And obviously, given that being a primary reason where some of the youth, and not just youth, but even Sri Lankans in general, adults, have migrated to abroad countries because they have lost faith. So how do you intend to prevent this corruption and ensure to give hope that, no, we will come back to Sri Lanka and we will give our full support, and also make sure that those who are considering to go abroad to reconsider staying back and giving their full support?
So I have always been a believer in the fact that anti-corruption institutions, programs and procedures should not just be confined to acts of parliament. I wholeheartedly believe that anti-corrupt institutions, procedures, human resources has to be given protection by the Constitution itself. By that I mean, now take FR. The FR chapter is what you may call an entrenched clause. Unlike an act of parliament, entrenched clauses cannot be changed willy-nilly. You know very well, I'm sure you are from the legal profession. What you need a 2/3 plus a 50+1 vote at a referendum to change. So install these anti-corruption institutions, the anti-corruption structure in the Constitution itself that will protect its independence, that will to a great extent negate any political interference, that will make anti-corruption institutions standalone institutions, very strong, devoid of party political indulgences. So that's one aspect. Make sure that the anti-corruption structure is enshrined in the Constitution and given its due value as an entrenched clause, so that you cannot change according to one's own whims and fancies. Second, while being in the opposition, we have walked the talk. Our group of intellectuals, that is the SJB Intellectuals Forum and SJB Legal Forum, chaired by President's Counsel Upul Jayasuriya, both of them combined to take those who have been the mainstays of governance during the time of Sri Lanka creeping into bankruptcy. They were taken to court. There were fundamental rights applications. And we got a verdict, 4-1. So we walked the talk while being in opposition to make sure that the practitioners of policies that led to bankruptcy were brought to book. And also to tell you, once again, we have forwarded a private member's bill. I believe that's also proposed by our party General Secretary. Honorable Iran Wickramaratne, stolen assets recovery legislation. We have already done that. So we have shown through our actions that we will not tolerate any corruption, and corrupt personnel, be it politicians, officials, or whoever they will be brought to book. And we will conduct procurement, government procurement, through public digital platforms, so that the typical crony capitalistic activities that are taking place right now. A good case study for all of you all to research is the Poonakeri floating solar project, where it was an unsolicited proposal, and the floating solar project was handed over to a company that were solar panel distributors abroad. Right? So that's a classic case whereby crony capitalism had succeeded. That will not happen under our administration. There will be no unsolicited proposals, period. All governmental transactions will take place through through digital public platforms. Anybody bringing in proposals for whichever project will be publicized on our pages. It will be publicized. Person A brought forward this proposal, and this is the proposal. So that's very clear. So that competing proposals will also have its day. So there'll be very, very heavy transparency, responsibility and accountability in our governance process. And I understand your concerns with regard to the present situation in our country. But we will ensure that we will establish the requisite infrastructure in the governance process to make government more people-centered, people-oriented and people-led.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Check. Just to add to that point, also in our blueprint we clearly state that we will be establishing an independent public prosecutor's office. I think for legal professionals that we know clearly the Attorney General today plays the dual role. He's a representative of the government as well as he needs to prosecute cases. So we clearly will establish a public prosecutor's office so that in order to ensure that the prosecution, the process is transparent and that it'll happen without any influencers at any point. So this public prosecutor's office will take center stage and is also one of the key priorities in an SJV administration. And also for the Easter Sunday attacks, we clearly say we will establish the public prosecutor and also a special commission to investigate into the Easter Sunday attack as well, where we will appoint a 7-member committee comprising of international investigators as well as international judges and local judges together with the President's Council, 7-member committee to investigate into Easter Sunday attacks. So in terms of prosecution, in terms of ensuring transparency and accountability, SJB government is quite serious about it, and I urge all of you to read the first section of our blueprint. We clearly have a section on transparency and accountability. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions? Yes.
Sir, Mr. Tarakananakara a while back stated that Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe is proud of the fact that he single-handedly got over the economic crisis and that he shouldn't be so shallow about it because that's his duty as a president to do so. But actually, during the economic crisis, you were offered first the presidency and to do the same duty Mr. Nanakara spoke of. So was that not your responsibility as opposition leader, which you so blatantly refused? So can I know the reason why you refused to fulfill your duty back then? And what's the guarantee that you can give us that if another crisis does arise in the near future, that you won't run away from your duties like you did in 2021?
So, please hang on to your mic. Is it okay if I answer your question in a rhetorical manner? Is it okay?
Yeah, for sure.
So when everybody else was running away from the presidential candidates in 2019, afraid of Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who took up the challenge?
You did, sir.
Thank you. My principle has always been, you have to govern with a proper mandate. Can you imagine Sajith Premadasa catching thieves with a Rajapaksa mandate inside Parliament?
But back then...
Hasn't the present president become the protector of Rajapaksas? What has he done to recover stolen assets? What has he done to bring those who have committed and perpetrated corrupt activities before the law? Under his watch, how many cases have been taken away due to lack of evidence? So, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not going to interrupt you. You can answer back. Why I didn't agree with the proposal given by Gotabaya Rajapaksa, it's not a new thing to me. During the 52-day crisis, when everybody was keen on stabbing Ranil Wickremesinghe, the Prime Minister, behind his back, 71 times I refused the Prime Ministership. So was that correct or incorrect? Was I right to refuse that? Because Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe is the one who brought in the Yahapalne government. He had the Prime Ministerial mandate, the 2015 mandate. I was offered the Prime Ministership 71 times. And I said no. Why? Based on principle. It was not a mandate that I received. It was a mandate that Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe received as the Prime Minister. And I was the deputy leader of his party. So just understand my thought process. My biggest problem was I forwarded certain conditions under which this change would take place. Because it's not a matter of becoming president. How do you get your acts enacted in Parliament? Who's the majority? Can't you remember that 2020 elections? The Sri Lankan people gave SLPP a resounding majority in Parliament. So if I had become the president, and if I had to do the right things, I would have had to get the consent of the rogues, the very same people who bankrupted. So I don't shy away, I don't run away, but I can understand the president trying to propagate such stories because he has been the leader of a party for over 3 decades, right? So some of you all may not have been born at that time, and throughout your lifetime, he would have been the leader of that particular party. So we will not shy away from taking responsibility. If we were shying away from responsibility, would I have contested? That is, we want to get the mandate, people's mandate.
I would like to add something more to that. When you said Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe had recovered, brought the country to recovery by economic crisis, what I said was, in my words, what I said was, there are no fuel queues, there are no power cuts, and that is the job of the president.
Can I expand on that, please? Now, so you're talking of stabilization now? Okay. My take is this. You have stabilization while you have made the lives smaller. the economy has contracted. The macroeconomy has contracted. The microeconomy has contracted. It's called Arthika Sankochane, Arthike Hakilim. So, you don't have to be an Einstein to make things small and stabilize. Do you know, Ranil Wickremesinghe presidency is so incompetent. They have not even ascertained the amount of people living in levels of poverty. It's thanks to the Learn Asia survey that we gather that the poverty levels have increased from 3 million to 7 million. I believe it's much higher. So, all what I'm trying to say is, as far as governance is concerned, it's very easy to impose hardship on the people in the guise of having good figures. Do keep in mind, you need to focus both on the macroeconomy and the microeconomy. Macroeconomy entails what? Investment, employment, inflation, budget deficit, balance of payments deficit, trade deficit, so on and so forth, right? But microeconomy looks at the individual. Microeconomy looks at the household. Microeconomy looks at the business community, the firms. Those are the technical definitions. So I look at both macro and micro. And if you were to ask me, could I have established this stability? Of course I could have. I could have made lives very small, reduced your purchasing power, reduced and changed vastly your consumption patterns. Do you realize this so-called stability has been attained at the closure of more than 260,000 micro, small and medium-sized enterprises, with millions going into unemployment? What kind of stability is that? In fact, there is a danger that has been created between the haves and the have-nots now. There's social enmity. You know, people are cursing at others because some have survived. Others have gone into poverty. Are you aware that people are very, very unhappy that in local debt restructuring, the super rich were saved and the workers' EPF, ETF was basically penalized? What sacrifice has the primary bond dealers done in local debt restructuring? Zero. Absolutely none. So I think when you're talking of stability, stability has many elements. And most important of all, cometh 21st September, I will not be under obligation to the Rajapaksas to save them. I will have the people's mandate to make sure those cronies and those robbers and those who looted the public treasury are brought to book. And I won't be controlled and cajoled by a kind of a totally ideologically opposed majority in Parliament. So I hope you understand my line of thinking. I hope I didn't hurt you by my answer, but I wanted to be very crisp and surgical in my reply.
That was an absolutely fantastic answer, sir. I think we can give him a good round of applause for that. We have one more question, I believe. I think we can accommodate one more question, and then we need to conclude the session.
Okay, I don't think I need a mic. Pardon me. This takes a little longer than I expected because I'm attending a political forum after about 6 years. Being someone who wanted to get into politics, who got into law college in the top 20 and won college politics with a record and then gave it all up and started working with marginalized children for 7-8 years. I've been disappointed with the system, and I know lot of youngsters I see who are pretty much younger than me, and I feel like most of them will migrate. To be very honest, your heart, see you after you get your degree, you will probably migrate. But most of them will migrate, I feel like the audience here today. I think one of the main reasons, along with all that was mentioned by panelists, is that the system, in terms of ethics, I was really moved when Iran mentioned about ethics. You know, we focus on the end, it's important, but the means is very important. So ethics and even meritocracy. A lot of people I see, it's to do the right thing, to go to authority, you need contacts in this country. You need to pull in a favor. So when you mentioned you are not in debt to the Rajapaksa cronies or anyone like that, we respect you if that's the case, but there are few individuals we have seen that are part and parcel of your campaign, and I know this culture can't change overnight. You need the majority vote to win the election as well. But what's your plan from there onwards when they call you in for a favor? I scratch your back, you scratch my back. I have to do this. Or we've seen certain individuals, very recent incident. 2 parliamentarians out there, both of them who have exploited the marginalized communities in T states, going and fighting on live TV. Is there any discipline reaction for them? Anything of the sorts? So my thing is, in terms of meritocracy, in terms of the system change, when they call you back and say, I got my people to vote for you, what would you do in return? What's going to be your response? How are you going to make sure that whatever the systems that you all speak of today will be in place going into the future?
Okay, so I want to give you a kind of an answer with a bit of the background. How many times, how many people have been poached from my party? Lots. But I think most have remained. Okay? Do you know, never have I ever considered providing any sort of financial benefit or support or remuneration, either to keep those who are going or to take someone who's coming. I'm telling you. All of those who have come, they've come unconditionally. They have gone through our social democratic, social market economy program. They have seen 4.5 years of our functioning. Not without its faults. I admit to it. I don't pass the buck. I take responsibility. So, to start from that, we have never ever recruited members to our party through monetary favors, nor have we tried to keep anyone from going through monetary favors. You may not know, several years ago, I remember, of course I was in the UNP, 17 members of the UNP were taken to Singapore and kept in a hotel for over 2 weeks because they were going to be poached by the government. So that's the type of culture that we live in, but I can guarantee you that there are no personal quid pro quos. No, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. It's called the symbiotic relationship. So, all who have supported me, all, say for example, the business community who have supported me, I have promised one thing, that is a level playing field for all to compete. And may the best person or institution or individual win.
Honorable Sajith Premadasa for you all. A round of applause for that question, please.
Allow him to. No, go ahead. Small or big, no issue. Go ahead.
In terms of that, let's say ministry portfolios, you have a structure to say, okay, this will be given on meritocracy, because that's one thing we've seen very commonly. Everyone coming into power saying these sort of things, but then once you give the positions of power authority, goes towards most of the time it's for populist opinion, for populist people with populist power. In your cabinet or the structure that you propose, because I mean, to be very honest, I want to come here and see what you have to say. So, do you have to propose a structure where you will ensure it's given to the person with the right skill set?
Well, most important, I have to tell you, the correct cabinet, we don't know what it is now. Because soon after the presidential elections, we'll have to have a general election. And it is those who become members of parliament post-general elections, because there's no guarantee that people will get elected. Then only I can talk to you about personnel. But I can tell you that the structure is in place. We have made sure that we have 27 to 30 ministries, basically 27, which are structured with subjects and functions allocated, and it's there. And along those lines, we have done policy papers with regard to those relevant subject areas. But I understand your concern, and I understand that you're highly suspicious. You're very much pained by what has gone on, and you're right, because what has happened in recent times is completely unacceptable. All I can tell you is this will not be repeated. We will have a new chapter, a new beginning, and I hope to be the role model so I can instruct others when I am standing at the right place, the correct stance. The biggest problem with most leaders is they don't stick by what they say as far as their own personal activities, private activities are concerned. So we will walk the talk. I mean, in Sinhala you say, Ova denu parahata tama sammatehi pihitasita. You tell others and you advise others, while you yourself is in a principled position or stance. So that will be the way that we will work.
Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Sajith Premadasa. I think we have one more question, sir, and then we can conclude today's proceedings. Yes.
Right, good afternoon, Mr. Premadasa. It's a pleasure to see you in person. So the 2022 financial crisis, it was basically a testament to how poorly this country is prepared for potential energy crises. So if elected, if you are elected as president and you bring in your cabinet, what policies will you introduce to secure our energy future, and how will you introduce those policies?
Sorry, to secure?
To secure our energy future, and how will you introduce those policies, especially in terms of renewables?
So energy generation and energy security, they are very important. You have to generate energy at the most efficient levels, that is highest quality and lowest cost. And as far as energy generations are concerned, we need to have a reasonable mix so that we have a diversified set of energy generators so that we don't become risk prone. We have to be risk averse. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So you go for the most efficient, low cost energy generation methodologies, but also make sure that you have a fair mix, that in case that you face vulnerabilities in one area, that you are able to quickly resort to others so that you don't become energy insecure or you become vulnerable to some shock that may take place in the process. So on the one hand, you have to ensure energy security, and on the other hand, you have to ensure energy efficiency. And it's the world norm, the international norm, and of course what Sri Lanka ought to follow. That is, propagate, enhance, encourage renewable energy for many reasons. For reasons of cost efficiency, for reasons that are environmental, for the fact that this generation, our generation, we all have to hand over a country that is environmentally healthy and environmentally suitable for the next generation to live in. So, unfortunately, today there is a fashion of promoting renewable energy on the one hand and using this renewable energy prevalence to engage in highly dubious transactions related to energy generation. If I remember correct, when the Energy Acts were amended, in order to create a culture where you would encourage and fast-track renewable energy proposals, we agreed up to 10 megawatts. You could go through the feeder tariff formula, and you can have unsolicited proposals up to 10 megawatts. That's just to speed up and encourage this whole renewable energy process. But beyond 10 megawatts, go for competitive bidding. So the government agreed to that up until the last moment, but maneuvered the legislative program and agenda in such a manner that everything could be unsolicited, even beyond 10 megawatts. So the buzzword is renewable energy, and everybody encourages the government and all the stakeholders to get on with it. That is because that's the best. But through propagating renewable energy, there is this huge danger of unsolicited proposals being used for projects that cost the country. We are agreeing to very high tariff rates. We are agreeing to conditions that are unfavorable to the country and the people. So yes, we have to encourage energy generation, renewable energy generation, and energy security, all right. But we have to make sure that those buzzwords are not used as a conduit for corruption to prevail.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Honorable Sajith Premadasa, please. With that, I think we can conclude the panel discussion for today's proceedings. That was the Youth Forum, ladies and gentlemen. Tarakananyakara, Attorney at Law. Yes? Sure. All right then. Looks like we aren't concluding. If there are any other questions?
Thank you so much, firstly, to the SJB party for organizing this forum to facilitate a discussion of this nature. My question is to do with the economy. So, sir, if you look at the debt to GDP ratio, it has been 104.4% in the last year itself, and I'm assuming that's the case even now. And in such a backdrop where we have debt servicing to do, one of your main proposals has actually been increasing the salaries of government, like civil servants. So how exactly will the economy under your leadership bear that massive cost and also the debt servicing that's required without reducing the productivity of the civil servants, which we have also faced, which has been quite low in the past decades as well?
Now, this is on a, I'll come to your specific question, but on a general level, what is the debt to GDP ratio in Japan?
Japan is 200, sir, but...
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to explain a point.
Okay.
So, being in debt per se is not a wrong thing. If you borrow and you're able to cover your capital and interest expenses, but also through your project you are able to earn something for the country, debt is the way to go. That's the point that I'm trying to prove. So, there is, the important fact is, what do you use the monies that were borrowed for what purpose? Was it for grandiose, personalized projects or for projects that resulted in a return? So having said that, I want to add one more thing. Now you have the Hambantota Harbour. You have the Mattala Airport. We all know that they were useless projects, right? But I would also like to tell you, we can't keep on harping about the past alone. We have to be smart enough to devise projects that will make sure that these unprofitable programs are made into profit. Now that is very hard. That's a hard thing to do. So I can assure you that, of course, yes, you look back in the past and you learn from your mistakes and you correct the mistakes. But you can't recover the debt by just, picking up Mattala Airport and going and handing over to those who lent you money. It is there. So we have to make sure, and I can tell you, it can be created into an airport that has great potential. Not by a singular activity, but through an integrated activity. Now I'll come to your question. As far as state revenue is concerned, state revenue collections can be conducted in a more efficient manner. And those who have to pay their taxes, some are not paying. They are not brought into the tax net. Tax administration in our country is extremely poor. Through digitization, we hope to raise a lot of revenue. We also hope to cut down on expenditures, cut down on wasteful expenditures. There's a lot of duplication. There's a lot of unnecessary expenditures. The temporary trustees, who we call ourselves, we have to cut down on everything. And the role model will be the president. I can do the cutting myself and ask the others to follow. So that kind of a leading by example approach, we hope to cut down on funds. And as far as providing adequate remuneration to the state sector, it will also be accompanied by a massive retraining program, upscaling of skills program. Because you can't just throw away people. These are people in our country. The state sector consists of Sri Lankan citizens. It's the decade-old, not one decade, decades-old wrong decision-making that has left us with this. But you can't just treat them as nothing. Reduce them and use them as what? Collateral damage? No, we can't do that. They are also citizens of our country. We have to take care of them. But I agree with you that public servants must be trained and skilled in such a manner that they add greater value to the country. And I think the public service is very, very poorly paid. They have to be motivated. They are the implementers of policy, both at the center and the periphery. And they have to be empowered. They have to be knowledge empowered. They have to be empowered with the requisite HR skills and also salary alike. So don't worry, because we have to abide by a particular ceiling. as far as expenditures are concerned. Within those ceilings, we will be conducting our economic policy.
Thank you, sir.
I think we can have one more question, sir, and then we need to stop because we have certain constraints on the venue. Yes, one more question.
Thank you. So the Honorable Leader of the Opposition spoke about the inefficiencies of the state departments and the state servants. But as the youth, we believe that these inefficiencies is due to the currently prevailing political appointments of said state departments. What does the Honorable Leader of the Opposition have to say regarding these political appointments? Because we believe that for these to function properly as intended, that the right person should be put in the right position. How can we as the youth expect transparency and accountability when it comes to this? Does the upcoming government promise that the right person will be put in? Because as of now, we have several state departments that are underperforming and are at the brink of bankruptcy. And for our economy to move forward, we need to develop these and focus on an export-driven approach. Therefore, before we focus on these government servants, we need to also focus on who leads these entities. And with that, I would like your opinion, sir.
So, I think you are referring to state-owned enterprises. There are very few that have been profit-earning in recent months, in recent years. I think what we should do with profit-earning institutions is also to instill new management procedures, inculcate the values of private enterprise and entrepreneurship, and make sure that we enhance the profits. I totally agree with you that loss-making SOEs cannot be pumped with scarce taxpayer money, which could be otherwise used for important subject areas like education, health, smart learning, agriculture, fisheries, industry, so on and so forth. So we will embark on a restructuring program with minimum collateral damage that would entail, adopting a formula that Singapore has adopted, the Temasek approach, where these government institutions will be part of this holding company. And the restructuring will take place to make sure that loss-making institutions become profit-making and money-earning institutions. There's another model that was practiced in Malaysia called Khazanah. Maybe you can read more about it. The Temasek and Khazanah models are good examples of how SOEs can be restructured from loss-making to profit-making. And I totally agree that the taxpayers' funds have better usage. They should be utilized to make sure that we become a smart country through smart education, smart health, and so on and so forth. So I agree with you.
Thank you.
Right. One more question, sir. You wanted to ask a question? No? We can accommodate one more question.
So I would like to raise a question on something that needs to be addressed and also something that was mentioned in your speech as well. Given the currently prevailing education system in Sri Lanka, which is exam-centric and exam-oriented, which is why many believe that not a lot of inventors and innovators actually rise from Sri Lanka. And so how would you reform the current student-centric education system to produce more innovators? And also given the high demand for the medical school admissions and the limited capacity and resources of state universities in Sri Lanka, approximately only around 2,085 students are entering into the universities every year, state universities particularly. And so what would you propose to accommodate more medical students into the universities if you are in power in the near future?
So our educational reforms will minimize parrot learning it's also called rote learning. That is memorizing stuff and regurgitating what you have memorized at exams. We will go for more modern teaching methodologies. It's called pedagogy. And those modern teaching methodologies which are primarily case study based, practical based, those avenues will be followed in our major changes in the education system. We will also make sure that we will protect free education. Now, protecting free education, in my view, also involves modernizing free education. It is not modernized. It's very old-fashioned and archaic. And the modernization process will make sure that the state education system also become relevant. In addition to that, we want to create more opportunities for students in the higher education arena. So while protecting, modernizing, and strengthening the state education system, we will also ensure that options for students, be it in the medicine sphere, engineering sphere, and many other spheres, that options are available. Sri Lankan students need not go to China or Russia or other countries to obtain medical degrees. Those options will be provided here. So while protecting and modernizing free education, the choice for the students will be enhanced here domestically.
Thank you, sir. I think we can now conclude today's session. Thank you.
No, I'm ready to answer more questions because I can't be accused of running away.
Unfortunately, sir, we have to give up the venue in a couple of minutes. So we need to conclude today's session. Thank you, everybody, for coming. This is the Youth Forum, a legal panel made to ensure democracy in the country. My name is Milinda Randenia. Thank you, Attorney at Law Taraka Nanayakkara, Attorney at Law Lihini Fernando, President's Counsel Farhan Kasim, and of course, the Leader of the Opposition, the Leader of Samagi Jana Balawegaya, Honorable Sajith Premadasa. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. We've organized some refreshments for you all outside, if that is okay. Yes, once the Leader of Opposition leaves. Yes, we can conclude today's session.